Welcome back once again to the event of the summer, Archived Memories, Episode 8.
Well,
Take it away, Isaac.
I missed you people. I didn't think I would, but I did.
Look at that.
All right, that's enough sappy shit. Let's talk about cards.
Hell yeah. We do have to start talking about like Netrunner, just in general though, before we start talking about specific cards. Got to keep up with the shtick as long as I, have something to talk about that's, at least tangentially related to Netrunner.
All right, what do you got for us?
So I had recently seen that the Colorado Netrunner group, which I live in Colorado, by the way, for our listeners who may not know, had posted. Obviously, it had gone, dormant, if not completely dead, since the retiring of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they are trying to bring it back. They're, I guess, hosting some, regular Netrunner meetup again, and have a tournament scheduled. Only unfortunate thing is they're, trying to go the Nisei route with it.
Well, that's a little bit gross.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you need to contact whoever's in charge, direct them to episode 1 of this podcast, where we clearly inform the audience that Nisei is not real.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
It's fake. And, then I'm sure they'll come to the right conclusions.
Sure. But yeah, I was hoping that it would be more in like the Eternal format, even if it used Nisei's like current Eternal format, which I don't hate.
Right.
I'd be like totally cool with that. But it's like the whatever startup format where it's like real. It seems to me, at least from what I've seen, like really small card pool, majority of it being Nisei cards, and I don't know. Even if I did want to go up and play with the Nisei cards and try to, like learn that meta, I don't want to print all those cards out.
Here's what you do. You show up with a not Nisei deck and just play anyway.
See, there you go. How long do you think it would take somebody to catch on that, like, I'm just, like, not using the Nisei rule set at all?
Probably longer than it should.
Like, if I just showed up with, like, my last, like, tournament deck lists before the game ended.
Yeah, okay, so that's your homework assignment, is you're going to go and do that.
All right. Well, this tournament in question is not until August, so theoretically we should record some episodes between now and then, but...
Well, all right. Fine, I guess.
Anyway, I guess let's actually talk about some cards now.
Okay, shall I lead us off?
Yeah, take it away, buddy.
All right, well, the first card we're looking at today is Diesel. It is a Shaper event, costs 0 credits to play, and it says draw 3 cards, and it is 2 influence. All right. Aaron, why did this card always feel so awesome to have in your hand?
I mean, really, the short answer is because it gives you flames, as it says right there in the flavor text.
Indeed.
Is it fair to say that this was just an auto-include in every Shaper deck?
Just about, yes.
I can't really think of an excuse not to be running Diesel in a Shaper deck. Obviously, at the 2 influence, while it is most certainly importable, it's not easily importable.
Mm-hmm. Particularly since it's something you're going to run 3 copies of if you're going to run it.
Yeah, nobody is like, oh yeah, let me just throw this 1 copy of Diesel in my deck. But yeah, it gets you through your deck so fast. And there's not really any downside to it. All you're paying is the 3 deck slots, which really, when you're dedicating those deck slots to this card,
right,
it's almost like you're not really, because
you're shrinking your deck effectively.
Yeah, so it's just a classic card. It's one of those where it almost is so kind of straightforward and good and just like face value, like you get what it says.
Yep.
And drawing 3 cards is really always good. You pretty much are never in a circumstance where you click to draw and then you get a Diesel and you're like, oh shit, you know?
Yeah, well, this fucked my turn up.
Yeah, and then also, I mean, fucking starting with a Diesel in your opening hand rocks.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And really, Diesel, a lot of times, especially let's say you mulligan, maybe you get a shitty hand and you mulligan, right? Diesel could turn what's maybe a mediocre hand into a very good hand.
Right. Yeah.
Because if maybe the last card in your hand is Diesel and the other 4 are, like good cards, but they need some, extra setup or, stuff to work with them or economy or whatever, Diesel has a very strong chance of getting you those cards.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. It's just good action tempo. You know what my favorite part about Diesel is?
What's that?
0 credits.
Yeah. I mean, 0 credits is great. Would this be an auto include if it was 1 credit to play?
No, I don't think it would. You might still include it, but it wouldn't be an auto include.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, look at the equivalent, the Anarch card. I've had worse.
Yes.
Granted, it's also got like the damage protection aspect to it, but it's not an auto include in Anarch decks. Like, it's very good. I run it in most of mine, but it's not auto include, I would say.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where it's not an auto include, and I've had worse. I think in the few amount of Anarch decks that I do build, a lot of times I don't even go 3 of with I've had worse. I might just go 2,
Sure.
But that's really more specifically including it as like an anti-damage tech.
Sure. And Anarch has more varied draw solutions, some of which we've talked about. Wild Side. You've also got Inject. So, I mean, there's other things you can do, where Diesel is kind of just the core of Shaper draw.
Right. They could have never printed another draw card for Shaper, and Shaper would have been totally fine.
Yeah. Particularly because, tutors for days.
Yes. And that's what I think makes Shaper as a faction, I think, feel so good. Especially if you're just trying to run like a nice, solid, rig deck, or a lot of like tricks with different kind of programs and things like that, is that they have with just Diesel and a good amount of tutors, that's such a good foundation to really not have to worry about being able to get your pieces when you need them.
Right.
One thing I will say that I loved about Diesel is I ran a Comet deck for a good while, which, shout out to Comet if we ever get to it. One of the most underrated consoles, in my opinion.
I never loved playing it that much, but I did like that it existed. It was fun. But yes, you're right.
Well, it fucking ruled, let me tell you. Because being able to just like Diesel into Sure Gamble, like Diesel into another, like a run event, like Diesel kicks so much ass with Comet, because you may not even be sitting on any good events. You could have no other events in your hand and then play Diesel, draw into it, and okay, cool, trigger Comet.
Yeah, that's valid.
So great synergy there, of course. I mean, it has synergy with any event, Comet does, but Diesel felt especially awesome when you drew into an extra event that you just got to play without having to spend another click.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. All right. So that's also kind of basically how you play with Diesel, right? You put it in your Shaper decks, basically always.
And don't use it on your last click.
Yeah. Good advice.
Yeah.
Draw earlier in your turn. Good general principle.
Or if for some reason you like hit some damage and then like you draw on your 3rd click and you only got 2 cards in hand and it's a Diesel, then you're probably fine. But
yeah.
Outside of that,
just don't throw cards away pointlessly.
Yeah, don't just be like, oh yeah, 5 cards in hand, last click, Diesel, let me throw all this shit away.
I have done that just when I'm really digging for something and I'm desperate and it's just
Oh yeah,
dig,
yeah.
dig, dig, dig. But
I think we all have been there at least once.
yeah. Okay. I want to really quickly side tangent and compare this to one of the other cards that we will probably get to in the coming months, Quality Time, which was for a while kind of one of the other main tools that Shaper had access to.
Yes, the super diesel, if you will.
Indeed. It's one click still, but you're spending 3 credits for 5 cards. Now, obviously, the 3 credits is not a small amount of money, and 5 cards is a lot of cards. So this is definitely that it's a more niche version, something that you might run 1 or 2 of compared to Diesel's 3.
Yes. 3 cost is pretty steep. Interesting to me that the extra 2 cards, equates to that huge jump in price, from 0 to 3. That always kind of struck me as odd that it's like, well, if you kind of equate it right, that, a card is sort of, again, I use it loosely, right? Sort of equal to 1 credit because you can click for either or. Click is equal to a credit, equal to a card, yada, yada.
Right.
So it always was interesting to me that Quality Time was 3 up from Diesel 0, but you only got 2 more cards. Interestingly enough as well, that I think is worth pointing out is that Quality Time is only 1 influence.
True. Yes. Easier to just splash if you need to draw a solution in some other faction.
I will say that I think overall Diesel's the better card than Quality Time.
Agreed. For sure.
Quality Time's interesting though. I never really ran it. Did prepaid voice pad Kate run Quality Time?
The couple of times that I played it, I put 2 in there just as an easy way to gain quick benefit and get tempo and things. I liked it in prepaid.
Gotcha. Anyway, we're not talking about Quality Time though. We're talking about Diesel.
Right. No, but Diesel was awesome. Diesel was awesome, and 0 credits is a big part of why.
Yeah, this is just a classic card. I think kind of a necessity. I mean, can you imagine the core set without Diesel? Imagine the game without Diesel? I mean, I feel like this card kind of has to exist, right?
Kind of has to exist, for sure.
Yeah. Meta discussion. I mean, it only affected the meta in the sense that it was in every Shaper deck ever.
Yeah. So we've talked about this a few times, but not so much a part of the meta as it is just baked into the meta.
Yeah, it's just like I said, an auto include in basically every Shaper deck ever, and so yeah, really at this point, I think all there is to talk about is the flavor.
I like the flavor. For one, there's the art. I like the art, like the kind of striking orange and glowing shit, and you pop the cap and flame shoots out. I love all that.
Yeah, definitely a parallel to the real life energy drink Red Bull.
Yes. As you mentioned, the flavor text Diesel gives you flames. Obviously, it's a Red Bull callback, but I love that just even in the cyber future, the answer to I need to be more productive is just caffeine.
Yeah, just drink an energy drink. I got some hacking to do, so let me just guzzle this Diesel real fast.
Absolutely.
Very classic. Well, I think it's about time. I mean, well, I guess we could talk about the art. The art's okay. I don't actually think the art's great, but I think it works. I do, like you said, I like the kind of flames and shit, but I just think the art, how it's drawn, from a technical perspective, is not great. This hand is pretty fucked up looking.
Yes.
Even now, I was just looking at his thumb. Look at that thumb, dude.
Something uncomfortable is happening to that thumb.
Yeah. So that'd be my only kind of issue, I think, from a flavor perspective, is that the art, what it's depicting is good, but kind of how it's depicted, not the best.
Yeah. I have been informed recently that hands are hard to draw, and this is an example of that, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess you can't blame him.
Well, they got paid for it, so we kind of can.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. All right, what are we rating Diesel?
I'm going to give Diesel 4 stars. Now, on the surface, this is the sort of card that I would commonly start detracting points from, just because it's like ubiquitously good and its effect isn't that interesting. But I always loved having it in my hand, and it made me feel good about myself. And so 4 stars, plus it was mechanically awesome, mechanically very strong.
Yeah, generally I hate just like flat, like objectively powerful auto includes like Diesel,
Yeah.
but there's something so intrinsically fun about being able to just draw cards that also doesn't render or take away any fun from the opponent. Like, it's not like Diesel is just like a really oppressively good card that just like, you know, when you're playing as a corp, you're like, oh my god, this shit again. Like, I hate my life, you know?
Yeah.
I would be more willing to kind of deduct points, if you will, if it were, you know, do like some account siphon shit where it's like, I am so tired. You know, it's not like I'm so tired of Diesel. Like, please kill me. You know.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna give it a 5. I love Diesel. I think this shit rocks. Put it in every Shaper deck, and I think when you throw the Comet in there, that extra spicy meatball, if you will, like just chef's kiss, like awesome, fun. Put it in every Shaper deck. I played Shaper almost exclusively, so put it in every deck.
Yeah, it was that sort of card, so fair enough. And you're right to point out the fun you can have with it with common.
All right, so high marks for Diesel, which, I mean, it deserves. So
it does.
You just can't go wrong with a little Diesel in the fridge, you know.
Who doesn't want flaming caffeine?
An idiot. All right, moving on. Suppose I will take this one. We have Modded, which is another 0 to play event. It is an event mod. And it reads, install a program or piece of hardware, lowering the install cost by 3. And it is 2 influence out of the Shaper faction. So, Isaac, why did Modded never get the love that it really deserved?
Well, because it's good economy when you look at it on its surface. Like, it's a click for 3 credits, kind of. So in that regard, it's a little bit similar to Easy Mark, which we covered a few episodes ago. But it also installs a card at the same time. A
like
programmer, right? Exactly. So you're basically gaining 3 clicks or 3 credits and a click, more or less, is kind of the value on it there. Yeah. But you have to install something with that. Now, the most common places I would see modded used are for things like R&D interface. It's 4 to install, which means that even Mac is going to get value out of it when you've got her -1 on install alongside a modded. You just slap down an R&D interface for free. That's awesome. Sure, great. But a lot of the time when shapers are installing their programs, they're tutoring them in with things like self-modifying code or clone chip, which don't work with modded. Yes. Whatever you're installing with modded has to already be in your hand. So draw order matters. That makes this a little bit niche. Like, it's not a bad card. Stuff like R&D interface, like I mentioned, like hardware pieces, was where this kind of shined, because you're going to have to install those from your hand, basically.
Yeah. I will say that I think modded had at least a little bit more time in the spotlight than it did after things like self-modifying code had come out. Because prior to like self-modifying code and clone chip in creation and control, I do think that this saw a little more play.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
When you were more naturally, you know, drawing into your, you know, your stuff.
Sure. Yeah. It's worth noting that this is going to combine well with a number of the core set cards, things with some higher install costs, which didn't see much popularity, but out of the core set you were gonna have in your deck, things like the toolbox.
Yeah. It definitely helps with those sorts of things. As you kind of mentioned too, it directly synergizes with Kate's ability, assuming it's the first thing you install in the turn.
Right. As long as you're not wasting credits off of modded or max ability when you do it.
Yeah, for sure. Helps with a card that is actually represented on this card itself. Magnum Opus, of course.
Yep.
Really, I mean, if you have a modded in your Kate and you get that Magnum Opus, you're in the fucking money right there.
Mm-hmm. Your problems are over.
Right. I get my Magnum Opus out for 1 credit and I am on easy street. But yeah, I think after Creation and Control, though, when Shapers just kind of were in Tudor City, then it was like, all right, modded does not synergize with what Shapers are now able to do. So really no sense in running it.
Right.
We kind of already talked about playing with modded, though, right? I mean, really, it's if you're going to be running modded, you want to make sure you have a lot of targets for it.
Yeah.
You don't want to be loading your deck up with 1-2 cost programs and hardware if you're going to be running modded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I do think modded maybe has perhaps more of a place in non-Mac IDs, just because you're more likely to get value out of it, if that makes sense. If you're installing a 3-cost console of some kind, like, I don't know, a Desperado or something, if you happen to import that, then that 3 deduction you're getting, you're not wasting anything off of it. So modded can have more of an impact outside of there, but those decks were so uncommon that it's like...
I don't know if you're going to be playing a non-Kate deck, you're going to be playing something that is a little more focused in what exactly it wants to do, to where modded's probably not going to fit in there.
Maybe.
I don't see running modded out of a kit deck.
Dinosaurus, Yogg, R&D interfaces. I'm just saying that there's arguments to be made.
Sure, absolutely. But I think most of the time, if you're going to be running this, it's out of Kate and you're running, big expensive stuff to get out for cheap.
Yeah, perhaps. One thing I would like to note on the side of playing with modded is to account for the fact that when you use it, you're spending 2 cards out of your hand. Cards are also hit points. I have seen runners die by playing a modded to install some breaker or something that they needed, and then running, and then dying because they didn't have enough cards in their hand anymore.
Yeah, that is something that you always want to keep in mind, especially if you've got stuff that may be running kill things across the table. Or if you're sitting across from, a faction that has kill stuff. Is that you're right. You're going down from, 5 to 3 if you modded something out.
Yep.
Which is 3 is the scary zone.
Yeah, and God help you if you go down to 2 and you're against Jinteki.
Oh yeah. Kind of talked about playing with it already. Playing against it, I mean, is there really anything that you do? This is one of those where everything that it does happens before you would ever have a chance to interact with it.
Yeah, pretty much.
If you're playing those kill decks, then you hope that they run after modded did something out.
Sure, particularly a thing happened later in the game's life cycle where decks that oriented towards killing would oftentimes try to do so, Jinteki's mainly, by 1,000 cuts. You'd try to just chip away at the runner, force them to spend cards, then they're spending clicks to draw new cards, and eventually you're running them lower and lower and lower and bleeding them out.
Yeah. And this definitely helps you out if you're trying to do that. But yeah, I don't think that there's really anything that you can do to play against modded. It's just an effect they're going to get by playing it. So.
Yep.
Do we think modded really affected the meta?
Not much, no.
like I said, I think I kind of already, spoiled this discussion earlier in that I think modded had a pretty decent place in the pre-creation and control era
Mm-hmm.
of Netrunner, which is a pretty interesting era, I'll say. Creation and control kind of cracked things wide open.
Yeah,
For the
creation
game,
and control. Obviously, shapers really started to come into their own with that.
Yeah. And from there, where shapers went, modded was not allowed to tag along.
Nope, not so much.
But I'll say that in the early pre-creation and control, of course, that Genesis shapers modded was pretty good. I could definitely see this being, one or two off in a lot of shaper decks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, flavor time. I reckon.
Flavor time. Like, okay, the one thing I do like about this card's flavor is the marriage of effect and flavor, where it's like, all right, I'm spending my time and my genius to kind of make all of this easier to assemble and whatnot, and so on and so forth. And I kind of like that Mac is creating magnum opus in the art while this is happening, but I don't like the art because Mac's hair and head in general really bother me.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this supposed to be Kate? I reckon it is, but her hair, and face, are like completely
out of control.
Different. Yeah, they're insane.
I'm sorry, Ralph, but I don't like looking at this card.
I like everything else kind of surrounding it. Really, it's just he went too hard in the paint. He flew too close to the sun with the hair.
Yeah. And her hands are like the size of her head.
That is true. There are some weird proportion things going on. Do we want to read the flavor text?
Sure. Okay. I'll do that. There's no replacement for a homegrown program, fed on late nights, OD bars, and single-minded determination. Cheaper, too.
I don't like OD bars.
Were you, quick tangent. Were you a fan of Firefly, Kika? /Aaron?
Yes.
Okay.
I do like Firefly.
Do you recall OD bars, the commercial from the Serenity film?
No, Serenity I only saw once, and
it wasn't super rewatchable. But the random cutesy Japanese style commercial that triggers River into going into a murder rampage in that bar in Serenity is an ad for fruity OD bars, and I've always just assumed that this was a reference to that.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. I can see. Given that I have never heard the term OD bar in my entire life, I can only assume that it's a reference to that film then.
It's a bit of an odd reference, but you know what? Okay.
I would say that generally the best references are the more subtle ones, so. But yeah, flavor, I'm going to stick with a serviceable.
Yeah, it's okay. It's mostly the art that I've got an issue with.
Yeah, I don't even hate the art. I just think it's a little funky.
Shall we rate this bad boy?
I reckon that we should.
All right. I'm going to give it a 2. Which feels harsh, but...
Yeah, it does feel a little harsh.
But it feels like it wasn't forward thinking. Like, at the time that the core set came out, this card made sense. Yes. But then Shaper just moved away from it. And I don't think it necessarily had to. Or they could have included something more forward thinking with it. Now, obviously, this is me, sitting in my basement, throwing peanuts. But I don't know. It felt like they could have done a better job at doing some effect that worked better with the direction Shaper was going. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll chalk that up to definitely easier said than done, but I can't agree that this feels definitely feels like a core set card.
Yeah.
This had a very short window of kind of usefulness and effectiveness. Not saying that it's unplayable by any means, in the later, cycles of the game. But it feels very of the time, I guess. This is a core set card that works well in the core set, is good in the core set, but then as more and more packs came out, this just seemed pretty antiquated.
Yeah, agreed.
However, I am going to give it a 2 as well.
I'm surprised. I thought you were going to go higher.
I thought about it for a second, but I mean, it's one of those cards where I never played it. So I don't even have like a personal kind of stake in it. And when a card was really only useful for the first 10% of the game's existence, I mean, you can't really make that many arguments for it, especially when the art's not even that good.
Right.
So 2 it shall be.
Okay. Next up, we have the Maker's Eye. It is a Shaper event. It costs 2 to play. It has the subtype Run. It reads, make a run on R&D. If successful, access 2 additional cards from R&D. And it is 2 influence. All right. Aaron, why was this very quickly not the multi-access of choice for anyone?
You might as well ask me why the sky is green. It's not. Yeah, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I ran the Maker's Eye, and at least 2 or 3 of it in every deck I made the whole time. Because it rocks.
I'm not saying that the Maker's Eye is not good. I'm saying it got quickly overshadowed by other multi-access, and I stand by that.
I mean, maybe overshadowed, I guess, but... So here's why the Maker's Eye, I think, was always good, and always worth playing in regards to other multi-access cards. Because obviously we got a few different kind of flavors and types of multi-access as the game went on, right? Biggest one in this instance is going to be in, kind of the biggest alternative, we'll say, to the Maker's Eye that came out was the previously discussed R&D interface, right?
Yes.
So here's why I think the Maker's Eye is definitely worth using, and then sometimes better than R&D interface. So now, obviously, a lot of it comes down to the type of deck that you build, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the previously talked about, instances, if you're going to be running things, say like modded and stuff like that, and things you're running it at a Kate, and you're going to be, making a lot of money and discounting the value of things, and you're going to, go really consistent big rig, hammer R&D, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. R&D interface is obviously going to be quite enticing for that sort of playstyle. Now, however, that is only one of the types of playstyles in the game, and one that I didn't necessarily even tend to run out of Shaper. I think the Maker's Eye is completely worth using instead of R&D interface if you're going to be going for a more fast and loose, hit them quick, hit them hard, don't give them a very good inkling of what you're going to be doing and when you're going to be doing it. Sort of more surprise factor type of runner or type of Shaper. Because the thing about R&D interface, the biggest difference, I'll say, between R&D interface and the Maker's Eye, right?
Yeah.
Is one is very heavily telegraphed and one is not.
True.
If I put down an R&D interface, the corp knows exactly what my plan is and what I'm going to do for the rest of the game, essentially. Not objectively, I guess, per se, but they know what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, that's very true. And this may surprise you, considering I opened up with kind of shitting on Maker's Eye a little bit, but I like Maker's Eye better than R&D interface for that reason. And R&D interface is just very vanilla. But anyway, that's not why we're talking about this. I think R&D interface for the general Shaper style was generally more serviceable. It was getting consistent accesses where a lot of Shaper rigs were built around continued efficiency and always having the tool that they needed, and being able to just anytime you want go for R&D and say, all right, well, I'm going to get at least one more card and maybe I'll get 2 extra, maybe 3, depending on how many R&D interfaces I have installed, means it's a persistent threat.
Sure. Now, the way that I tended to play Shaper was that I did not generally, play a big rig per se, or a, consistent sort of strategy where, I got everything set up and then, I was trying to, access R&D, every single turn.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, I tended to play more, like I said, fast and loose, get FEMs out, cyber ciphers, things like that, to be able to make quick but high impact runs on R&D when the corp, wasn't necessarily expecting me to be able to.
Okay, yeah.
And I think the Maker's Eye was great for that.
Fair enough.
Because the Maker's Eye, you definitely have to honor, but it could definitely be a surprising card. It's not one of those where just because they're green necessarily means that they're going to be, running it or going to be able to hit you with it.
Yeah, that's valid.
Where again, things like R&D interface, more recently, the turning wheel, that's kind of more telegraphed. So the turning wheel less so because it works, on HQ and R&D.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, as we've discussed in the past, Netrunner's a game about information, right?
Yeah.
And I liked the Maker's Eye for giving the corp as little information as about what I'm going to do and where I'm going to do it as possible. I can hold on to the Maker's Eye for as long as I feel like I need to, and wait for kind of that moment to strike, and then, hey, Maker's Eye, and have some high impact accesses, especially if I'm running it with Comet. I mean, loved indexing Comet into Maker's Eye.
Mm-hmm. While I think that the sneak attack approach is a valid one to do, and I like it personally, if the corp is looking across the table and is seeing green cards, they know the R&D attack is coming.
It's true. Obviously, sort of the same way that they see blue, they know to, defend HQ. But I think it may, because there's different levels of commitment, right, to defending your servers. I don't think that, a corp is going to see green across the table and be like, yes, I must quadruple stack R&D immediately.
Yeah.
Where if I have 2 R&D interfaces out, that is probably something that they're going to get around to doing.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I'm not even necessarily saying that I think the Maker's Eye is better than the other multi-access options that came out. I just think that the Maker's Eye is good for what it does. Can be really effective, and I don't think that it was ever at any point in the game, bad or even not on the same level as the other multi-access cards.
At least around the areas I played, I definitely saw far less of the Maker's Eye than I saw of, say, medium or R&D interface. But it was always around. It was never a card that disappeared completely. And particularly in like the prepaid Mac days, it was very common. Because obviously you get the benefit from recurring credits. And sometimes when that deck was popular, I'd see this alongside an R&D interface. And they've got an R&D interface down and they play a Maker's Eye on top of it. And it's like, okay, well, my life is miserable.
Yeah, there were definitely decks that I ran where I had R&D interface and the Maker's Eye at the same time. think in those instances, I would usually be running like 3 R&D interface and then like a one-off of the Maker's Eye.
Right.
To kind of really jump and like, boom, I'm accessing a million cards.
Yeah.
But we kind of already talked about playing with it, as we often so do when we jump into these card discussions.
Indeed.
But playing against it, which we've kind of touched on a little bit, but so we'll say that obviously playing against it is really just protecting R&D, right?
For the most part, yes. One of the things that I would keep in mind alongside of it is this is a run event, meaning it's only happening for this run, so it's going to change the way you think about, am I rezzing, am I not? Whereas if somebody slaps down an R&D interface and they run R&D, I might say, okay, maybe they already have seen one of these 2 cards, something like that. Maybe rezzing isn't very important right now. Maybe I need my credits for other things. Whereas if they've run R&D recently but just gotten a single access or so, and then they throw the Maker's Eye, this is changing the math more than your average R&D run. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think correct me if I'm wrong. Mostly what you're trying to say is that R&D interface, they may be getting some redundant accesses, while the Maker's Eye, they're almost always going to be seeing a fresh set of 3 cards if they're playing it.
Yes.
Which I would agree with. I would also, one thing that I was going to ask as a follow-up, right? How often, if you're playing against Shaper, right? How often are you going to honor the Maker's Eye as being a possibility, right? Because you're saying that you didn't see a whole ton of it, how much do you worry about it?
Sure. Yeah. Valid question.
And I think that helped, helped it too, because, I will agree that a lot of other multi-access was more common. But I think in my experience, that helped me get some, sick, just stinging Maker's Eyes off.
Oh, that's totally fair. Like, I am a huge fan of the off-meta play just for throwing a different angle at people so that they're playing against something they're not as practiced against.
And so they may think that, okay, well, I've got 2 ice over R&D against Shaper. That's definitely serviceable. There's no R&D interfaces or turning wheels or whatever out right now. So, I'm fine. But then, when I, Cyber Cipher, Fem into indexing Comet Maker's Eye, it's like, oh my god, what is even happening right now?
Yeah.
I just think that the Maker's Eye is good for that. Playing against it though, I always honored the Maker's Eye, but just because I played with it so much, so I was always keeping it in the back of my mind that if I was playing against green, that hey, they may throw a Maker's Eye and just get a random 3-drop access from R&D if I'm not careful.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Shall we talk about this card Slayer?
Yeah, because I think we already talked about the meta, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
Other more favorable multi-access cards came out, but I think that the Maker's Eye was always very good. I don't care what you say. Flavor. What is the Maker's Eye? What is this thing? What am I looking at?
It might be this weird cyber glass / head jack that's on this chick. It might be like the thing you're running through in order. I don't know, man. I'm not entirely sure what the Maker's Eye itself, unquote, is. I'm a little confused on that point.
I will say that just as a name, I think it's a cool ass name.
Yes, agreed.
And so much so that I don't necessarily know that I care what the Maker's Eye is, because it just sounds so cool. Like, so
okay.
Like, oh, the Maker's Eye. Like, all right, well, that I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool.
All right, I'm on board. Let's do it.
One question about the art. So is her hair all purple, or is it green back there, or is that green stuff like the glow of what we will say is the Maker's Eye?
Man, it's hard to say because low down it kind of looks like it's maybe like glow or cables, but high up it looks like that's her hair. I don't know, man.
Yeah, all kinds of weird shit going on with this art. But
There's
I will
even
say
like
that I
some
like it.
blue.
Yeah, it's weird blue stuff going on there too. There's every cyber color in the book on this bad boy.
Yeah, I do like the art.
Like it looks cool. Like I don't know what it is or supposed to be or what the implications of this are supposed to be. Like in a in universe sense.
Mhm.
As far as what the game effect is. As far as I'm concerned, the function to flavor may as well not even exist.
Yeah.
But the art is cool. The name is cool. And I do think the flavor text is cool, which I'll read right now. Some of the professionals have good instincts, but they can't see beyond the data. They can't see the matrix. Ellie Smoke Skovac.
Yeah, I mean, we maybe get some peek into what the Maker's Eye is here, and maybe it's like intentionally mysterious to say, oh, well, if you don't know what it means, that just means you're one of those professionals that can't see it.
Yeah. I guess that is, what the implication of the card's function is that the Maker's Eye is the sense that you can see beyond the data to access more than just what's at the face value of R&D or whatever.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I mean, from a flavor perspective, it's one of those where I don't understand it completely, but do I really need to? Is it for me to understand?
It is not meant to be understood, merely sought.
Right. And I think that that's cool enough as it is. Rating time.
I am going to give the Maker's Eye 4 stars.
Interesting. I could feel the 3 wanting to escape your mouth there.
It's a very borderline card for me between 3 and 4. I think the effect is good. While I stand by the fact that I think it became somewhat a lesser multi-access, it was never a bad multi-access, so it was always around. But basically for the surprise factor, for the fact that I really do like this art quite a bit, and for being, I don't know. I like this card. I like it, and I'm giving it 4 stars. Whatever.
That's fair. You like the aura of it.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna hate me for this. I'm gonna give it 5 stars. I don't care.
Really?
I think this card rocks. This is like my go-to. I don't want to say it never let me down because I mean, trust me, we've all had those multi-accesses where we get let down. But that's true of any multi-access, right?
Did it let you down, or did you let it down?
Right. Probably the other way around. I probably couldn't see it at the time, but that's just because I couldn't see beyond the data.
Indeed.
But yeah, I'm gonna give it 5 stars. I think this card kicks ass. I ran it in every Shaper deck I made because it rocks. That's all I gotta say about that.
All right, I respect it.
All right. Oh, I forgot this card existed. All right. You know it's a good sign. You know it's going to be a good one when I forgot it existed. We got Tinkering up next, which is a 0 to play event. It is also a mod. It reads, choose a piece of ice. That ice gains Sentry, Code Gate, and Barrier until the end of the turn. And it is 4 influence out of the Shaper faction.
Oof.
So, Isaac, why did I forget this card existed?
Because nobody fucking used it, that's why. Okay. So, Tinkering, basically what it's doing is saying for until the end of the turn, this one piece of ice, you only need 1 breaker. Whatever your best breaker is, or the only breaker you have installed, it can get past it.
Right. For all intents and purposes, if you play this card, choose a piece of ice, you are going to be able to break it.
Right. So, what would you say, Aaron, is the biggest strength?
Oh, you cut out a little bit there, sir. Repeat that for me.
What would you say is the biggest strength of Shapers?
Their ability to get what they need at a moment's notice.
Yes. So, they have the ability through myriad other cards to already solve the problem of whatever ice they're going to run into during the run.
Yes.
This feels what we're saying is tinkering is solving a problem they don't have.
Right. Well, and I think this is another card that now, obviously, just spoilers for when we get to it, I guess. But modded that's a way better card than this. But it's suffering the same thing that modded did, right? Yeah, that post creation and control, there was just no reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see this being worth looking at. I'm not going to say, worth a deck slot or anything, because I don't even think in the core to Genesis era that I ever played this card or felt like I needed to. But I could see an excuse for
it. It's almost like there was a time early in the game when the creators thought that, like, they thought that Shaper was going to be an event faction.
Yeah, maybe. Guess I can kind of see that.
I mean, you've got solutions like Diesel for their draw. You've got tinkering to get past a piece of ice. Even seeing stuff like a test run. Test run is it's an event that does a tutoring problem and also has like all of the groovy interactions with stuff like Fem that we talked about.
Guess that's fair. So really what you're saying is that it seems like early on, the makers of the game thought that Shaper was going to be the way that I ended up playing them.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that's a fair point. They do have a lot of weird events that try to do weird things.
Yes.
In that early part of the game.
I mean, we just talked about the Maker's Eye. I mean, it doesn't directly synergize with like Mac's abilities, and Mac was everywhere and Mac was everything. It was these events that seemed to be something that they were trying to make the Shapers into doing, but just, I don't know, didn't quite land, except for in your opinion, I suppose.
Yeah, that was far later in the game. Really, it all came together with Comet. I definitely wasn't running a wacky event-heavy Shaper deck before Comet came out.
Right, fair.
That was what pushed me over the edge. Before then, it was, tutor stuff, make runs, yada yada. For the most part, pretty classic Shaper stuff. But
yeah,
I can tell you, I never put tinkering in any of my decks.
Okay, let me ask the lead-in question here then. If you were going to run tinkering, why would you?
So I think the classic example of where this might find a home now is in like a kit deck sort of thing. Because in that sort of deck, it's not too bad, right? Kit's going to automatically turn that first encountered ice into a code gate. So if a server's too deep, that means that, tinkering still gets you in.
Yep.
However, we got another card that does basically the same thing in Paintbrush. That if you're going to go for that sort of deck, I think was way more worth looking at. So Tinkering got caught in a weird position where it wasn't very good because nobody could really take good advantage of it. But then once we did have a runner that could take advantage of it, very shortly was a better card made for that, that archetype. But yeah, that's the sort of deck I would run Tinkering in. is just like in a kit deck, that's going to try to get early accesses, and until everything's basically stacked 3 up, you're going to be able to get in.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Even then, I probably am not running 3, maybe 2.
Yeah, I can't envision a situation where I run 3 of these.
How do you play against it, though? So say you are running against a wacky tinker.
I mean, that's kind of the point of this card, is that there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
The closest you could do is stack your ice deeply.
You're right. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that you can do in response to a tinkering. I guess not res. If I guess you would look at, all right, what is the breaker that they're going to be breaking my shit with, and is the cost of this, because it is just a piece of ice, right? So it could be an unresed one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you do at least have some agency in that. Okay, what is it gonna cost for them to break this toll booth with their, corroder or whatever? Compared to regularly, will I res this now? Okay, no. I'll choose not to res it. But then, it's a one-off effect. So later on, when they have to, break it for real, so to speak, maybe then I'll res it, or most likely then I'll res it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Other than that, though, yeah, if it's a res piece of ice, you just shrug, I guess. Tinkering did not affect the meta.
No, at all, ever.
Confident in making that statement.
What about its flavor?
All right, so I, during my looking at of cards while I'm supposed to be working, I kept this in mind to bring up on this very podcast, and I have kept it in the back of my mind, honestly, probably overlapping memory space for useful things in my life that has not been there.
We've all done that.
But I can finally get it out. I can finally clear that partition, if you will. In that, did you ever notice that tinkering is like destroying or fucking up or whatever a hunter?
I never did, but it really is, isn't it?
Yeah, hunter is the ice being tinkered here.
Of all the frickin' ice to tinker, you're gonna tinker a crappy sentry with a weak trace.
Yeah, right. That always was super odd to me that they would choose hunter for that. I'm assuming, obviously, that a lot of this art was done before any sort of cards were designed or functions were actually determined. But yeah, definitely now that everything's all said and done, like, really, you're gonna tinker a hunter?
It's definitely a questionable move. You know what? I'm curious. I know why. Both were illustrated by Christina Davis.
Ooh, you know what? That's a good call to look that up. I never would have kind of thought about that.
I see you, Christina. I like what you're doing with that.
All right, you know what? Hell yeah. That might bump this flavor up for me.
It might, yeah.
Anyway, I do think the art is pretty cool, though.
Very psychedelic.
Granted, I think what's being depicted is a little more hardcore than what tinkering actually does.
Yes.
Like, this hunter looks like it's getting fucked up.
Hunter is wondering what the hell is happening right now.
Yeah, so maybe a little bit too intense of a depiction of, hey, you're all the types now.
Yeah.
But very cool art, I think.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
A little sad that it's kind of wasted on a card like Tinkering.
Yeah. I wouldn't have minded a Tinkering playmat. That would have been striking.
Oh, I didn't know that I wanted that until now. That would have been awesome. Yeah, Tinkering playmat, shit. Somebody call up Christina Davis. Where can I get the full res original?
Yeah, hook us up, Christina.
Yep. You want to read the flavor text?
Sure. There's that moment, where when the whole world seems to fall away and it is only you and your mod, and the mod is the world. Deep, bro.
Yeah. I mean, pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, very Shaper.
Yeah. Just getting lost in the sauce. Getting lost in the cyber sauce.
Hunter's the one getting lost in the cyber sauce here.
Yeah, he is. All right, let's rate tinkering.
All right, 2 stars.
Ooh, interesting.
Gorgeous art. I like the marriage of flavor with mechanics. Of we're just going to like do cyber shit to this until it's everything, and I think that's cool. And Christina hooked us up, but this wasn't a good card. But I kind of like it, so 2.
That's fair. I gotta hit it with the 1. This is a card that like would probably be a 0, if not for the fact that the art's pretty cool. And then I discovered the whole Hunter thing.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a 1 for me. Just nobody played it. Nobody ever played this thing.
Yeah. I think I did put it in one kit deck one time.
Yeah, and I'm sure that it got cut pretty quickly upon your first few games.
It might have.
All right.
All right, next up we have Akamatsu Mem Chip. It is a Shaper hardware. It is 1 to install. It has the subtype chip, and it gives you +1 memory, and it is 1 influence.
Short, sweet, and to the point. 1, 1, 1.
Yep. So Aaron, just how boring is this fucking card?
Pretty damn boring. In its defense, I'll say that this probably has to exist in the core set, right?
Sure. Yes, agreed.
Like, you probably can't, in your right mind, release the core set without Akamatsu in there.
Yeah, you need some solution if there's like weirdos out there who just want to install 40 programs and you need to give them memory solutions, but
yeah, it's one of those where it's like memory is a thing in the game, so you have to have a card that can give you that thing without a whole bunch of extra caveats.
Right.
Sort of like or like an access to global sec and link sort of thing, which we'll get to eventually, but yeah, what is there to really say about Akamatsu memory chip or mem chip? I
It's just not much.
Chip. I can't bring myself to say mem.
All right, well, I'll tell you what Akamatsu did that was actually useful. Is it set the value of a memory?
Yeah. Set the score, if you will.
Right. 1 memory, 1 credit, hardware, so the safest of all types for the runner to install. That's it.
And that was it.
Yep.
Did you ever run this card? I don't think I ever found an excuse to run Akamatsu.
There were times when I would have Akamatsu. I think I ran a couple of Akamatsu chips in the Atman deck that I ran for a little while.
Oh, gotcha.
Just because you've got like data suckers and 3 Atmans, and then you've got some sort of sentry breaker in case you run into swordsman and so on and so forth.
Okay.
It was a very big rig deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cheap and easy memory solution.
Yep.
If that's what you need. But, I mean, as the game went on, I just think better, more enticing memory solutions came about. I mean, we literally got a better card, like just a straight upgrade in Astrolabe.
That's true. Yep.
So,
and that was a go-to console for a lot of shapers just because it was very simple and effective.
Yeah. It was just Akamatsu mem chip, but then plus you got to draw cards when your Earth Hub pooped on your face.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of all that I think really needs to be said, is that Akamatsu was so forgotten, even by the designers, that we just got a card that was just better than it. I mean, granted, consoles are unique, right? So you can't run multiple of them, but when are you really going to need to have 2 or 3 Akamatsus out anyway?
Yeah, not often.
So I don't think, I mean, as much as I don't want to skim past any cards, as we, kind of pride ourselves that
everything that needs to be said has been said.
Yeah, it's easy, it's simple, set the bar for memory, but they literally released a better card. And, outside of just some very simple early game, core set decks that absolutely needed the memory, you really weren't going to look at this card twice, and definitely weren't as the game went on. Just boring.
Yep. All right, Flavor Town.
It is a chip.
You want to read the flavor text for us?
Yeah, why does this card have so much fucking flavor text?
Because it's got so little mechanical text.
Yeah, that's fair. The Akamatsu company was founded on 3 principles. First, to make the fastest mem chips on the market. Second, to turn a profit. And third, to serve as a front for the manufacture of illegal neural stimulants. It is the last principle that perhaps explains their rabid brand loyalty. That's pretty funny. I like that flavor text.
See, it's a cocaine chip.
Yeah. Flavor text is good. Art is just, yeah.
It's a chip.
It's a chip. All right. What are we rating Akamatsu?
Yeah. 2 stars again. Because it's useful. Like, there's situations where you need to have it. Like, it serves a purpose. A card that needed to happen. And I do kind of like that flavor text. That makes me chuckle. 2 stars.
I guess we'll have a repeat of last round. I'm going to give it a 1.
It was a borderline 1 or 2 for me again, but I'm feeling charitable today. We'll go with that.
And nice guy Isaac, just really bumping up these shitty cards. I guess shitty's unfair. Just these meh cards.
Yeah. You know what? No, never mind. I'm going to change mine to a 1 because this is a card that it literally is just +1 memory. The flavor text made me smile, but now I'm bored. 1 star.
1, 1, 1, and 1 star. 1 cost, 1 memory, 1 influence, 1 star from the both of us.
Nothing but 1s.
All right. Do you think we can power through one more card here?
Yeah, we can do it.
And what a card it is. So next we have the Rabbit Hole. Or I guess Rabbit Hole. Why is it not the Rabbit Hole? That's stupid. Yeah. Alright, whatever. Rabbit Hole. It is a 2 cost to play hardware. It is a link subtype. Its text reads, +1 link. When Rabbit Hole is installed, you may search your stack for another copy of Rabbit Hole and install it by paying its install cost. Shuffle your stack. And it is 1 influence out of the Shaper faction. So, Isaac, why did this card never get played until Sunny existed?
Because there was no point to Link before then, really. Sure, Link is useful when traces happen, but whether traces happen or not is, with the exception of Sunny's console, which I forget the name of, Security
Nexus? Yeah.
That's the one. Okay. With the exception of that and a couple of our other cards, it's like the only time traces happen are within the corporation's control, basically. If they have traces in their deck is when traces happen. So that's when Link is useful. I mean, so what's the point? You're going to spend deck slots, particularly for something like Rabbit Hole, where you really want, if for some reason you're running Rabbit Hole, you're probably running 3 of them.
Yeah, under no circumstance do I think you run this card without running the 3 of them.
Right, yeah. But so what's the point?
I think to kind of continue on to the point you're making about there being no point, is that the problem with Link in general is that there is a very serviceable and oftentimes much more effective alternative to Link. Would you like to know what that is?
Uh-huh.
Just having money.
Would you say that you can use money for other things?
Yes. While Link is only useful in those circumstances that you described, credits are used for basically everything fucking else in the game. So am I going to run cards that give me 1 sort of credit when traces happen, if they happen, or am I going to run a card that gives me money to use on things in general?
Yeah, Link fucking sucked.
Yeah, Link. I mean, I guess I don't want to go too hot here, but terrible mechanic, I'd almost argue.
Yeah. Okay, so
Terrible mechanic that was the fucking bane of teaching this goddamn game
oh
to
my
new people.
god, yes.
Like, all right, let me explain to you this fucking thing that sounds really complicated but isn't, and also doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's not good. Okay, well, Link aside, Rabbit Hole does something kind of cool.
Yes.
Like, I tried to make this work a number of times because I was like, "That's so fucking cool!" Like, I install it and it thins 2 cards out of my deck, and suddenly I've got 3 or 4 Link, and it's like, and then the Link doesn't do anything. But the whole you install Rabbit Hole, search for another one, install it, and then that second install of Rabbit Hole lets you search for another one and install that one. That's cool.
Yeah. I really wish that we kind of lived in the alternate universe where Rabbit Hole exists, but it does a different thing than giving you Link.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's hard to say what would necessarily be balanced to do that. Like,
Yeah.
the problem is that this is just on the fence, on the razor's edge of like, it does what really at face value is a really powerful effect of fishing itself out of your deck to give you its benefit. But the problem is that the benefit that it gives you isn't good. So the problem then is, okay, well, if it gave you an actually good benefit, an actually beneficial benefit, if you will,
Yeah.
Would it be too powerful?
Maybe. Like, if this was like recurring credits to spend on, I don't know, icebreakers or something, that'd be really damn good.
Yeah, just a better Cyber Feeder? Sure, sign me up.
Yeah. I mean,
So
maybe
that's
if
the
you
thing.
bumped it up to like 3 credits to install, you might have an argument there. But
Yeah, but then you're talking about chain installing for 9 credits on your turn. And it's
yeah,
like,
a chain install for 9 credits, which is expensive. But then you also have 3 recurring things. You've thinned your deck for 2. It's like there's benefits to it. There's an argument.
yeah, for sure. I would be interested to see how powerful the Rabbit Hole would be, giving sort of different things other than Link.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a way that you could get it to be, good but not OP. As far as the recurring credits go. Yeah, I mean, because the thing about recurring credits is they're only as powerful as what you let the runner spend them on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that being able to insta drop 3 recurring credits for something could be good, but not broken if that limitation was in the right spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think let's go ahead and just skip to the single circumstance that this card was ever good or ever used at all. Being Security Nexus.
Yes.
So Security Nexus was a console that Sunny ran. It was Sunny's console. That forced a trace when you encountered a piece of ice. You could, initiate a trace whenever you encountered a piece of ice. And basically, if you won the trace that had a base strength of 5, which, in case you're not aware, I guess obviously we haven't talked about traces very much, being that we've just been talking about runner cards.
Mm-hmm.
But trace 5 is pretty high.
Yeah.
So you don't want to just be initiating a trace 5 on yourself willy-nilly. Because chances are you're going to have to spend a decent amount of cash to meet that trace.
Yep.
So it would initiate a trace 5. But if you did beat the trace, so if your Link and credits that you spent to boost the Link during that trace matched or exceeded 5 or 5 plus whatever the court put in, then you would bypass the encountered piece of ice, which, as we've talked about, in our previous card discussions, is a very powerful effect.
Yes, it is. Like, the bypass is great, and Security Nexus is a really cool console.
I kind of hated it.
Did you? Really?
I mean, I don't know. Were you playing a lot of Netrunner during that time? Because that was like really powerful and like really annoying to play against.
Yes, and yes, I was, but I still liked it, and it was powerful and annoying. But I don't know. I thought it was cool.
Like, it is. It's one of those like cool until you're playing against it, and then just like one piece of ice every run just isn't there.
Yeah,
and that's just like I think it was a little too good, but I'm going to give it slack for being so good. I'm going to forgive it for being so good in that, it let Rabbit Hole see play.
Yeah.
But anyway, ultimately, to tie this whole thought together, the reason why Security Nexus rendered Rabbit Hole as being worth it, and I think almost necessary if you were going to run it, was because if you were running Sunny, which if you're running Security Nexus, chances are you were.
I don't know. I saw a lot of Mac running Security Nexus.
I guess that's fair. But if you're running Sunny, you had a 2 base link, and so if you got a Rabbit Hole, that means that you were able to immediately get yourself to 5 link, which is matching that 5 trace. So that means
6
that
if you include Security Nexuses.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Security Nexus does give a link. So yes, you would be at 6 immediately, and so just boom, right then and there, your Security Nexus is essentially golden because every time you go to use its effect, the corp is going to have to pay money to stop you from bypassing that ice, which 9 times out of 10 they're not going to do.
Yeah.
So the one circumstance where Rabbit Hole was good was that it could close that link gap extremely quickly.
Yep. So it did have its day in the sun.
Yes.
Just not for a while.
And I would say a brighter day in the sun than Data Dealer did, even.
Yeah, because, Security Nexus decks were legitimately good.
Yeah, no, you could kick some ass with Security Nexus. While, Ian's Creepy Sleepover was just kind of a fun meme that, worked pretty good.
Yeah.
But Security Nexus, those were legitimately competitive decks. And the Rabbit Hole was, I would say a key part of them.
Yeah.
Because how else are you going to get 3 link in 1 click?
You're not.
Yep. But yeah, that's how you play with it. Playing against it, you run Fire or Foxfire. I almost said Fire.
Yeah, Foxfire again. Woo. Yay! Woo! Yeah, nobody cares. You didn't play against this.
Nope. The only effect it had on the meta was that it was as we discussed, key portion of that Security Nexus archetype.
Yep.
Flavortown.
I really like it.
I don't know if I'm kind of mixed on this one. I think the art is really cool. I don't know. I just like that neat little gizmo with the rabbit on it.
Yeah, 100%. That rabbit is adorable.
Yeah, like something about that. It's just nice. I don't know. I'll read the flavor text, which says, "It's not endless. It just feels that way." We never really got an explanation for what Link actually is, did we?
Yeah, it was kind of left ambiguous. It's like whatever stuff is between. Link is like, I think of Link as like how many proxies you're behind.
Maybe. I guess that I could see that working, but I don't know if the flavor, like, what's the flavor explanation for it being able to go find itself?
I don't know. Maybe that they're just like a series of little networked zombies that you have been plugged in somewhere, and turning one on lets you find the others. I don't know. It kind of makes sense, but it is a little bit disconnected.
Yeah, maybe it's like in like Mulan when they light all the beacons.
Yeah.
Like one of those sort of situations.
The adorable little rabbit beacons. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I'm into it. All right, I think the time has come that we give Rabbit Hole its sentencing.
All right, 1 star.
1 star? That's a little rough, my brother. I mean, granted, no. I've dropped some 1s, but
okay. The only reason I'm doing it is because adorable. It gets the stars. 1, the adorable little rabbit, and 2, I like the like search for your stack and find things, but fuck Link. Fuck Link. Like we talked about, the only time you can discuss what this did that was any use, we're talking about Security Nexus, not Rabbit Hole.
Sure. Yeah. But I'm not going to go 1. I'm going to go 2.
The reversal.
Yeah, to how the tables have turned. I mean, for what it is, Link's a stupid mechanic. But this was an interesting card. It has an interesting effect. I like the being able to search for itself out of the stack. I think that's fun. And much like Data Dealer, even though it spent the majority of the game's existence as binder fodder, it did find a very cozy home, even a cozier home than Data Dealer did, in a legitimately competitive deck. And I think the flavor's fun too. So even though for most of the game it sucked, I mean, it checks the boxes, as vague as those check marks may be, at least enough so to get a 2 from me.
That's a good argument. Almost enough to convince me to give it 2 stars, but not this time.
That's fair. Got to stick with your convictions. All right. Well, I think we'll call that a successful little jaunt through cyberspace there.
Yeah, this podcast wasn't endless. It just felt that way.
Da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, wait, I think I've already ended on that before. Bye.